Hi. I guess the entry point here would be to say that I grew up very Catholic. Like very, very, very extremely Catholic. For me, everything growing up was black and white, heaven and hell, good and evil. There was no gray area at all. And that's what I wanted all the way through high school and all the way through university, all the way until I met a smart, sexy, highly intelligent underwear model, photographer, musician with a master's degree in sociology, and she wanted to know me biblically. And our shirts came off, and our pants came off, and our underwear stayed on, and our hands intertwined, and we dry humped as one. But 28 years of Catholic upbringing raged back to cockblock me, and before I could even stop myself, I shouted, I'm a virgin! I can't have sex until we're married! And she said, okay, cool, you should probably leave, and then I did. Well, that's okay. See, that's the story I use for not seizing the day. I had a little meltdown, nervous break. I went crazy. And then eventually I put Catholicism on the shelf, and a lot started changing for me. I moved out of my mom's basement. You know, I quit my job. I had sex for the first time, and let me just tell you, okay, it was like the most wonderful 10 seconds I had had until that point. You know, seriously, it takes me longer to describe the event than the actual event. It was just so hot. I don't mean hot as in sexy, I mean hot as in temperature. Women's vaginas are really warm in there, and I just hadn't expected that. I was like a snowflake in a hot tub. I melted before I even got in there. I got it. High five, there we go. But when I quit my job, okay, I started to like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put Catholicism on the shelf. I'm gonna ignore my Catholic conscience completely. And I had the perfect opportunity to do this because I got a contract doing sketch comedy, 4.5 months worth, on the Norwegian Dawn, this cruise ship. And I was so excited, right? Because I could finally get over my Catholic conscience that said everything was good and evil, black and white, heaven and hell. And I was so excited because I was ready to seize the gray. You know? I even made myself a boat plan, okay? Step 1, find someone to have sex with. Step 2, have sex with her a bunch. And that person ended up being Rebecca Engelbrecht, an extremely tall South African receptionist aboard the Norwegian Dawn. And I think what I liked about her right off the top is what we had in common. Drunk. We were drunk all the time. Okay, I met her in this crew bar, and she was buying this $4 bottle of wine just as the lights were coming up in the crew bar, which meant security started to circulate to confiscate all the open bottles of booze, and I saw my in. You know, my chance to be chivalrous, my chance to be cool, and I said, Mademoiselle, would you like to finish that bottle of red wine in my room? And she said, yes, of course I would, but how is that even possible? And I said, shh, 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 very confidently, shh, shh, shh. And then I looked her in the eyes and I said, you leave that to me. And I took the bottle from her and I used all the subtle subterfuge at my disposal, and just like James Bond, I rammed it down my pants. And I waved to security and I left, and they were none the wiser. You know, how could they be? I get back to the room and Rebecca's like, take off those filthy pants. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I look down and there's this big red wine piss stain, right? And so I take out the bottle and I say, Rebecca, take off that filthy top. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I splash her with red wine, you know? She's like, ugh, and she takes off her top, right? And I take off my pants. And I have this raging hard-on that looks like this. And so I search the room for a condom, you know? Desk, no. Bedside, no. Pants on the floor, no. My suitcase, inside pocket, outside pocket, can't find one. Then boom, I find one, found one, and I straddle Rebecca, but I struggle with the package. I had never mastered using a condom. So when I open it, I just get the corner undone and some of the lube comes out. Now the whole thing is slippery. And so I try to squirt the condom out like ketchup from a packet. And it just kind of plops out on her naked torso, and I don't know which way is up or down, and now my raging hard-on is like the complete opposite. It's this like mild-mannered snail. I'm trying to force this snail into this shell, but how do you force a snail into a shell, you know? And Rebecca says, you know, James, I'm on the pill. The thought of having sex without a condom is like crack for my dick. I am immediately hard. But I know that sex without a condom has its risks, you know? Sexually transmitted diseases. But a new voice emerged in my head, and it wasn't the voice of my Catholic conscience. It was my new evolving morality. And the voice said to me, you know, James, the risk is all yours. What? The risk is all yours, because in order for you to be cleared for this contract aboard the Norwegian Dawn, you had to go to a walk-in clinic and be cleared of all sexually transmitted diseases. So the risk is all yours. And that voice was right, you know? I might get a sexually transmitted disease, right? But I wouldn't give Rebecca one. And the fear of getting a disease was very real. But it paled in comparison to the fear that my dick not being hard right now would mean that my dick would never be hard again. So we have sex without a condom. And let me just say, I feel the same way about sex without condoms today as I did back then. I loved it. I loved it. It was amazing. It was like a big, warm, wet flesh hug for my dick. It's good. I highly recommend it. It's very fun. Very good. It's the way to go. So, over the next few days, we drink and we fuck, and I start to feel guilty again because I didn't even know Rebecca, you know? In my past life, I would have to get married to have sex, and now I was having sex with a virtual stranger, and so my new voice emerged in my head, the new emerging morality, and the voice was like, hey, why don't you just get to know her? Maybe liking the girl you're having sex with a bunch is not too high a bar to clear. The voice was right! So I asked Rebecca out on a date, like a real proper date. And it was a toss-up between the Thai, Vietnamese, Szechuan, Tex-Mex, Tapanaki chicken and waffles place on deck 8, or steakhouse on deck 12. And I went with the Thai, Vietnamese, Szechuan, Tex-Mex, Tapanaki chicken and waffles place because edamame nachos are worth the rehearsal time required to remember that sequence of words. And she arrives wearing these gorgeous earrings and this lovely necklace and this long gown, you know, and she looks beautiful. And I commit to really loving this girl in this moment. I didn't know this at the time, but a date to the Thai, Vietnamese, Szechuan, Tex-Mex, Tapanaki chicken and waffles place on a boat is like boat marriage. This was like boat marriage. And so I offer her my arm. Instead, she takes my hand, and we walk to the center of this open concept dining room. I pull out her chair, and she crashes to the ground. I take her seat, and she takes mine, and above the table, I caress her hand warmly, while under the table, her silky satin slipper caresses my slippery fattened snail, and I have a fetish. I really like public, hidden, discreet displays of human sexuality. And I look around the restaurant and I realize that all the tablecloths are very short. And I realize that just because I can't see below my table doesn't mean that everyone in the restaurant can't see that I'm being foot fucked right now. And I think this is fine. It's fine, okay? Because we're getting boat married, you know? And this felt good. It felt right. This is what people do. They get to know the people they are having sex with a bunch, right? And who knows? Maybe somewhere in the far future, I would marry Rebecca. Maybe in the far, far future, we'd have children together. I'd spend winters in South Africa. She'd spend summers in Toronto. And it all started with me really getting to know Rebecca right now. Her, like me, you know, we had sex with people indiscriminately now, right? And the irony is that although she may have had sex with men indiscriminately, she was very discriminatory. She was a racist. I was having sex with a racist. Before the edamame nachos even hit the table, I say, Rebecca, how was your day? And she says, terrible, 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 terrible. This black woman came to the front desk to complain. Curlers in her hair, bathrobe on, slippers. She couldn't even bother to wear pants. You know, typical black person. And I say, not a paragon of diversity or anything, but I don't know if that is typical of all black people, really. And she says, no, trust me, it is. And she was on deck 12. Wonder how many food stamps that cost her. And I say, check, please. You know, I was so disgusted with myself. This is how far I had fallen. I went from having to get married to have sex to having sex with a racist. And so obviously, I have sex with her 7 or 8 more times, and then we are done. It is over until I'm horny again. We have sex a couple more times, but then it is truly done, except for a couple of blowjobs. But then I set a time to meet her and tell her in no uncertain terms why I can't see her anymore. I say, Rebecca, you are a better friend than a lover, I think. And it feels really good to take a stand against racism. I haven't talked to her for a few weeks, and I get back to my room, and there are 19 messages on my phone. And they're all from Rebecca, and they can be summed up in 4 words. We need to talk. Now, there are only 2 reasons why Rebecca would have called me 19 times, and they both have to do with unprotected sex. And so I take that phone into the washroom, and I close the door over the cord, and I feel kind of sick. And I haven't prayed to God in 6 months, but I pray to him now. I say, Dear Lord, please just grant me a sexually transmitted disease. And I dial her number, and as the phone rings, I cycle through diseases I would take. Brrring, HPV. Everyone's got that for sure, I'll take it, no problem. Brrring, gonorrhea. That's gross, don't know what that is, but sure, dial me up. Brrring, chlamydia. The clap, that's 1 pill and you're done. Sure, that's the fun one. Brrring, HIV, and she picks up, we need to talk. And she comes to the door and there are tears in her eyes, and I find out immediately that those are not STD tears, guys. Those are Christmas miracle tears. She's pregnant. And I say, how do you know? And she says, well, I missed my period and I took a home pregnancy test. And I say, what do you want to do? And she says, I don't know, but I don't know either, you know. And I can see she's terrified and I'm terrified too. And I just say, don't worry, okay, we'll keep talking, we'll work it out, it'll be okay. But I don't really believe it will be okay. Because as Rebecca smokes and drinks and figures out whether she wants to keep the baby or not, she also pulls the crew on potential baby names. She settles on Marcus if it's a boy and Katerina if it's a girl. And during this period, I call every OBGYN in every port city that I'll be stopping in. And eventually I get a hold of Dr. Abraham in the US Virgin Islands. And Dr. Abraham agrees to see us on a Sunday. And we go in to see Dr. Abraham, and Dr. Abraham is black. And part of me wants to say, hey, is that a stereotypical black person for you, Rebecca? But part of me also feels like this is a really odd time to make any sort of stand against racism, you know? Like the correct time was 17 unprotected sexes ago. So I don't say anything, and Rebecca takes off her top, and Dr. Abraham, he turns on the baby radar or whatever, and he rubs some jelly on her belly, and he uses the baby wand to poke and prod. And eventually he says, congratulations. And right there on the monitor, there's this little peanut. And I can see Rebecca melt. She goes, oh. And I melt. Oh. And Dr. Abraham, he senses the silence. And so he breaks it. Is this good news? No, of course it's not good. It's the worst fucking news I could possibly have heard, right? But I don't want to say that because Rebecca is looking right at me, you know? But I also don't want to say, no, this is great news. I can't wait to raise a little racist of our own, you know what I mean? I don't want to give any false hope. So I just say the truest, most non-committal, most honest thing I can think of, I just say, it's news. And I go back to the boat, and Rebecca and I keep talking, you know, but I think in my heart of hearts what I'm hoping for is Rebecca to decide to have an abortion. Only I can't ask Rebecca to consider having an abortion, because even as an ex-Catholic, if there is one go directly to hell, do not pass go, do not collect $200 sin, it's abortion. And so Rebecca leaves the boat 3 months pregnant and still undecided, and a couple of weeks go by before that prayer I made to God alone on the toilet is kind of answered by a Facebook status update that Rebecca posts. It reads, "The Lord took Marcus away from me far too soon." And I felt so relieved, but I also felt so terrible, you know. It wasn't black, it wasn't white, it was gray. I felt gray. I had the taste of gray in my mouth. And that's what life is, it's fucking gray. And then I left the boat and I went directly to a walk-in clinic, and that prayer I made alone to God on the toilet was answered in a real literal way. Because I had chlamydia. Thanks, everybody.